Well, dúspáirte mé na Galibhe, Cathair na Galibhe agus Cúnta na Galibhe, bolam bhhéchas a gháildíomh as ochtan cuireadh bheileh a nómh chun an síne seo, síne den anad seo chuirfaí láinseáil go hifigiúil, mar cogáirigus libh as ochtan méid atá buinte amach agah agus níl éireann árasach go méid an anad seo ag dul a bheabhas sna blianta atá roing gur amach go as ocht an méid atá ráite go i mo agus ó héamh an rialtas agus is úntaach an speige iad na scetamíní agus an díochas atá oribh hí na planana seo ag gáil atá saléir ón méid a gcuibh atá an seo in nómh. I want to apologize in the first instance for being somewhat late. We had a number of functions this morning, all of which reflect the very positive activity in Galway, both on the academic front and on the economic front, with Genesis first, and then the Irish Clinical Academic Training Programme, which we launched to phase 2 of, which was just quite remarkable in University Galway in terms of the talent of young postdoctoral students in Ireland, across the island of Ireland, and the kind of work that they're doing to make life better for all of us ultimately. Now, I was lured into the President's office then for a bite to eat, but anyone who knows anything about universities, if you're lured into the President's office, it normally can be quite a costly affair. But to be fair to the President, he was very modest and very constructive in terms of the discussions we had about the issues facing the university and the broader situation in facing students in terms of accommodation and so on. Delighted to be here at the Technology Centre because it's something that's very close to my heart. And Clodagh referenced the genesis, if you like, of how all this started. And it was a great lesson for the country that out of what looked like a great calamity, a lot can spring from it. All is not over when something that seems shattering at the time, and it was for many families who worked and so forth. I remember many years later Motorola closed in Cork, and this was the example we took in terms of, okay, how do you harness the talent that was in a particular organisation and company? How do you use that talent to create new companies, create new approaches to employment? And so it was a tremendous lesson learned in terms of what came out of that devastating news at the time. And one of those was Galway Technology Centre. And we should never lose sight of that learning process into the future, because that builds resilience in us to take the rough with the smooth. And that's important in life as well. We've been through a very challenging period with Brexit, which isn't quite over yet, COVID-19, and now the war in Ukraine, the geopolitical uncertainty. And speaking with Genesis this morning, they were saying for businesses generally, it's very hard to plan now in terms of what's happening globally in the world and the uncertainties around what's happening. The costs are quite significant on businesses in particular. And whereas during COVID, we did unprecedented things in terms of intervening to keep employees connected to businesses and to companies through wage subsidy schemes and so on. This is a different type of challenge in terms of the energy, in terms of trying to land the right intervention so that we retain jobs and protect jobs in businesses. And we have announced a variety of initiatives in respect of that, the temporary business programme under the EU temporary aid framework, but also schemes through Enterprise Ireland in terms of larger companies, mid-sized companies, and then through the LEOs as well, smaller companies. We will continue to work with businesses and with companies at different levels to bottom this out in terms of how we can actually ensure that the interventions we make have the desired outcome and objective of enabling companies come through this period, but also retaining jobs in companies also. And then parallel with that, how do we continue with the ecosystem we now have, Westbic here, the centre, the companies, the universities, the technological university, NUI Galway as well, in terms of how we collaborate, make sure that we keep new companies coming on stream, that we provide a very entrepreneurial framework. Like fundamentally, over 50 years, we've been pro-enterprise as a country, maybe longer now at this stage. We need to maintain that pro-enterprise approach. It creates the wealth that can then get distributed and that we can target. But fundamentally, Ireland's a very open economy. We depend on a rules-based international order. we export a lot of what we produce. And so therefore we have to, in my view, retain aspects of the model that have worked, core parts of the model that have worked. That openness, that approach to free trade, to a globalized rules-based order, that we're part of international organizations to underpin that. Because that's what really attracts investment into the country, but also allows indigenous companies to grow and export and gain market share all over the world. And that's something we should not lose sight of from a policy perspective. It didn't happen by accident. That's the point I'm making. And the policies that underpin it are important. And they've been stable, they've been consistent, and they've worked. We have to improve upon them. We have to do other things. We have to invest, continue to strengthen our investment in innovation and in research. That will be the key differentiator into the future. That's why this morning was the R&D Centre in Genesis, the clinical training programme. We launched the second stage in University College Galway. That's all about talent. It's all about research. It's about retaining talent and retaining brain power in the country, but also attracting brain power into the country and attracting talent into the country. That's what will grow our enterprises into the future. And I think we have a lot going for us. I think we have a tremendous talent base in the country. Our membership of the European Union helps that. Our education, investment education helps that. And also our openness for people to come in and work in Ireland from within the European Union and from the EEA also helps in that enterprise agenda. And the key pillars of the future of the economy will be the green economy and will be digitalisation. And I know I have no doubt that the company profile here in time will reflect that and many more in terms of biodiversity, for example, the challenge to restore biodiversity, which is urgent and pressing, but companies are coming on stream. It's interesting, many more companies are coming on stream in terms of the renewable space, particularly the wind energy space for offshore wind, which is key to the future of this country, but we've got to move much faster. The war in Ukraine has now accelerated the urgency of moving away from our dependency on fossil fuels to renewable offshore wind energy in particular, and solar energy also. So we then need to build companies and enable companies to grow in centres such as this that give us that expertise that we don't have a sufficiency of in respect of some of those sectors right now. And so that's why economies have to keep on evolving. And digital and green are going to be the key. There are challenges, but there are also opportunities in terms of jobs and in terms of new companies. And we have various strategies now developed in terms of digital, national digital strategy, or in terms of various specialisation strategies around artificial intelligence or smart specialisation and so forth. All of that is important. We have significant resources allocated right across the board in terms of green, in terms of climate, in terms of digitalisation, in terms of the life sciences. But the issue for us will be delivery and delivering projects on time, getting focus on that. And that is why we are undertaking a major review. It's nearly completed of the entire planning code, led by the Department of Housing and Planning and the Attorney General, to streamline the entire planning code with a view to resourcing it better, but also making sure that, given all that's happened over 30 years, that it's made more understandable to those who use it, more streamlined, but ultimately that we get results quicker. Not shortcuts in the sense of bad quality or bad whatever, but just get it done more professionally, in a more streamlined basis and a timely basis. People have a legitimate expectation to say, if I commence a project, will it be finished within a reasonable time frame, and are there time frames around that? And I think that's reasonable, and we need to get better at that as a society and as a country, and that takes work at different levels. I want to salute all who've been involved in this centre from the very, very beginning, and it must give you a great sense of reward and satisfaction. That's something that started very small in the 90s, has grown to have such an impact on so many people through the companies formed, the companies that have grown to scale, that have scaled up, and have become big players in themselves. And I think we have the potential here to really go strong into the future. I'm very confident about the country's future, basically because of our talent base, but also I think we have developed that sort of partnership approach between the hard pragmatic edge of business with academia. Academia is coming to the table with very significant resources to put to the table, and the courses and so on are being modified, refined on an ongoing basis, and that gives me great hope for the future. So I want to wish you every success, all who work here, continued health and happiness, but outcomes as well into the future. Thank you very much indeed.